Welcome into the Bobby Carpenter Show. Excited to have you along with us once again today. Sitting here right with my guy, Mr. Anthony Schlegel. We've got a huge show for you today. We're going to have some questions from listeners. I'm going to be joined by my guy, Chris Plank, who does a great job out covering Oklahoma. So used to be the Big 12, now the SEC. Talk a little bit about college football and what's going on around the entirety of the country. Got some interesting quotes from Urban Meyer, Caleb Downs, possibly playing both sides of the ball. I mean, there's a lot of different stuff out there, a lot of different things going on. Schlegs, we're going to be able to dive into and really enjoy into this show. But I want to start out with Urban Meyer. Schlegs, he said this is the most talented college roster he's seen in the last decade. When you see that and you hear him say that, someone like him who has, done these unbelievable things, won 3 national championships, been around football for a long time, and comes out with a big statement like that, what does that ultimately say to you?
He loves Ohio State. I think somebody that comes from the talent they had at Florida, thinking about all the teams that he had from 2012 to 19 when he departed, all the first-round draft picks that he's had, looking at this roster, it is one of the most talented. And again, Caleb Downs said it, right? Talent means nothing. You have to go out there and execute, and they have the roster. And the reason they're so talented is that they now have the most players they've ever had in upperclassmen returning since the 90s, since you could actually leave early and go to the NFL. That's why they're the most talented, which then goes into what Ryan Day has done with the culture. Also, in that segment, Bob, I don't know if it was that segment or it was another segment when he was talking to Saban, but really it goes into there's 2 periods of actually recruiting, and you have to recruit your team twice a year to keep them, and how Saban was discussing how some of that role has to go to the strength staff and other support staff and the relationships that they have with the players to continue that recruiting process throughout the year. And I think with the continuity of Mickey Roddy being there for now, I think this is going on his 13th year, that definitely pays dividends into why they have all this talent, along with going in the portal and being selective. But we have to see it play out. 100%, it's one of the most talented, and a great testament to Ryan Day and his staff and what they've been able to put together coming from a guy like Urban Meyer.
What's interesting, I always say there's 3 aspects of college football coaching. If being a head coach, everybody looks at the game day coaching, and you can't screw that up. But you can get people to help you with that. You can find people that can help manage the game for you. Mario Cristobal probably needs that happening down there in Miami so they can figure out the timeout situation. This year going to even be more difficult for some college coaches who have never been in the NFL, understanding there's going to be 2-minute warnings, and you still have the stoppages inside of 2 minutes on the first down. So there's going to be a lot of different elements coming into play. The second piece of it is recruiting. You can be a great recruiter as a head coach. You can also hire great assistants to recruit with you, and they can go do a good job, and you can acquire all of that talent. And the third piece then is being the CEO and running the program on a day-to-day basis for 365 days a year, not just during games, not just during recruiting, but recruiting your own players, handling boosters, donors, the NIL, the portal, all the stuff that nobody wants to do. The reason Chip Kelly's back at Ohio State, because he didn't want to do that anymore. He just wanted to coach football. And so that recruiting element is critical, because I've heard John Cooper, a former Ohio State coach, say it a million times. You want to have players that are good enough to outplay your coaching. And so you can be an average coach with great players. You know what you're going to have, Schlegs? You have a great team. And so that's the element that they're trying to handle. And so when people say this about Ryan Day, well, yeah, it's easy. He's got great players. Well, he recruited them. He brought guys in that can recruit them. He's kept them there. They've developed a culture. They've developed some continuity. When you do that, that's when you ultimately will start to have success.
Yeah, if you look at, we threw out questions out there, Bob, and then it automatically went to this super negative Nancy's, negative Nick's talking about the O-line deal. And
dirty hole questions, Schlegs.
And I'm just like, you're sitting at the number 1 recruiting class of 25. You got a 4-star offensive lineman out of Toledo. Yeah, we got a 3-star lineman out of, Ohio. They know what this game's going to be about. I'm talking about the team up north, the Michigan game. And yeah, you're going to miss on some, but you also have a lot of guys in the building that you're going to continue to develop. But again, here's the other thing too. This is nobody talks about this. I'm just going to say this. Elite big humans are hard to find, and making sure they come on campus and then proximity of what that is difficult. And I'm not scapegoating anybody.
Yeah.
You know, like who is he, you know, like who has Fry like actually put out there, you know, in terms of guys that he's coached? Well, he had DeJuan Jones and Luke Whippler. They came out in 23. He was there in 22. So those were guys were there. They didn't have, and Paris Johnson, right? First round guy starting, unbelievable dude. He had him for a year.
In all fairness, Paris was probably a first rounder if you and I coached him.
Oh, yeah,
so I mean, he was elite human, elite athlete. But what he did with DeJuan Jones and Luke Whippler, and still, like you said, you have to develop the skill set for those guys.
And guess what? Nobody left last year. They're all back. So guess what? They're all going to get drafted this year. So I take it with a grain of salt, but it's just it's amazing how you have the number one recruiting class in the country and everybody wants this guy's job. Yeah, it definitely has to be better, but there's circumstances that I personally don't get focused on. I don't like being negative. I just like looking at the roster and what we're going to do in 24.
Absolutely. And so this team is elite. You look back, Strikes, right when you came into Ohio State,
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, they had 14 players drafted. I think the LSU squad had 15 players drafted in 19.
I think it's 14. I think it's 14.
No, we don't have the record anymore. They have 15.
Oh, okay.
Damn. You must have miscounted. I saw that.
I could have.
I looked at it, and because believe me, I would love to be able to still claim that. I'm almost certain because I work with the guy, Jacob Hester, who's an LSU guy, and so he lets me know. And in 2005, we had 5 first-round draft picks, which is second all time. I think Miami and Bama have each had 6 in a single draft. So Ohio State's had all this talent, but this team, you start looking around, it could be on the verge of maybe tying or breaking. I don't know if you can ever get 7 first-round draft picks. That's crazy. But I think you could possibly tie those other 2 records, maybe get 5 or 6 first rounders and maybe get 15 guys drafted in totality. But what you have to do to be able to do that, Schlegs, you got to be a winner and you've got to win. And you look at the teams that have had these monster draft hauls over in totality, like even Michigan last year, because people want to draft winners. And so when you're coming down the 5th, 6th, 7th round and it's this guy or that guy, like we want someone who we know is tough, who's embedded in a solid culture. And so that is what you want to see. And so when Urban says this, it's as talented team as they've ever been coming back to it. I mean, it is, but they've got to go out and win. They've got a lot of guys who have done a lot of great things, but they still have to be able to put it down and put it on the film and make sure you're getting the results that you need.
Yep. And if you just look at that, coming off that national championship in 14 and then going into the 15 and not making the CFP. And again, another one of Urban's most talented teams that he had, still guys got drafted, but we're sitting here probably talking about the exact same thing in 2015. But the thing that's different this year is the senior leadership and those guys coming back. That means a lot. And everybody that talks about the recruiting or even Ryan, and we'll probably talk more about the hot seat in that list and whatever, guys, they all stayed. Regardless of what you think of NIL, it's part of the pie, but they stayed because they want to win. They stayed because they enjoy playing with their teammates. I've seen it firsthand. So I know you guys haven't seen it. So, I mean, honestly, just trust me. Like they honestly enjoy being around one another and playing. And that starts at the top and it starts with Ryan.
Yeah. And so one of the other guys they brought in, Schlegs, and it's interesting, you talk about talent on the team. Obviously, Caleb Downs has been the topic of a lot of conversation.
Yeah.
He led Bama in tackles as a freshman. I don't know if anybody's ever done that. You saw him return a punt for a touchdown. The possibility of playing offense here at Ohio State. I don't know how much that happens. He's so valuable on the defensive side, and they have 2 elite running backs, and the freshmen have really come along. Especially your guy Peoples, you and my Peoples. He's looking good.
San Antonio, baby.
Yeah, wasn't the Sam Williams-Dixon. He's looking good too. Like, so they've got some good young talent. I would put the over-under. I said this at 9.5 for him potentially on carries this year. I wouldn't surprise me if they get some to put it on tape just to give coaches something to think about. I don't know if you truly want a guy like him who's so valuable on offense or defense, rather, playing on the offensive side of the ball in a position not like wide out where you can run around and you got space, playing a position like running back where you can sustain some big hits.
Well, and that's the thing that's different between a Travis Hunter and a Chris Gamble, and we got to see Chris firsthand. Those dudes are anomaly. They played cornerback and receiver I mean, we're talking, I just remember last year, I think it was like 144 snaps that Travis Hunter got in one game. I mean, I just started getting dehydrated thinking about that number. And I don't necessarily like it for two reasons. One, there's only one football. And that's the one thing when you have a really talented offense, like, is everybody going to think that they got their opportunities? That's also part of the flow of the game and opportunities. And then you throw somebody else on the defensive side of the ball that takes a couple of those opportunities away from potentially 2 first-round draft pick running backs. And as a defender, Bob, you and I already know this. Like, he's coming to the game. There's a certain package. Like back in the day when the Wildcat was new, right? It was like Wildcat. And we automatically shifted to something. Regardless if he's in, you're just expecting him to do something, but you still go through your 4As, alignment, assignment, alerts, and adjustments, and then you just trust your eyes and you play ball. It's not like it's going to be anything spectacular, right? It's going to see if he can get in space and do something with the football because he has that innate ability. But I just view it from the other guys in the receiving core and the running back room, and tight ends don't even care. That's why I like Coach Bailey. Like he don't even care. Like our guys are going to block. If they get a touch, that's great. Like we want to be physical. So I like that. I'm not even worried about them, but I'm thinking about running backs and wide receivers. And again, those touches are critical for them.
They are. They're really critical. So we'll see what happens with all that, Schleiks. All right, we're going to take a break because we've talked a little bit about Ryan Day and on the hot seat. We threw out a poll out there. We'll get the results of that. But I want to look a little bit about coaches' records versus top 10, winning percentages since they've been head coaches. I think the results, they might surprise you a little bit based upon what you've seen. We'll dive into that here next on the Bobby Carpenter Show. Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Bobby Carpenter. I want to give a huge thank you and a shout out to Affinity Whole Health, the leaders in the testosterone replacement industry. I've been on a testosterone replacement program for a few years right now, and I've got to tell you, it's been an absolute game changer. Affinity Whole Health has allowed me to be the best version of myself, both mentally and physically. I loved how easy it was to get started. I booked my free consultation, met with my prescriber, checked my numbers, and Affinity Whole Health designed a program that was customized to fit my needs. So I'm telling you guys, if you have low energy, you want to get rid of that spare tire around the waist or take it to the next level in the bedroom, Affinity Whole Health is the place to get started. So don't wait any longer. 5 minutes of your time, book your free consultation. You're going to love the way you feel. All right, now it's time for headlines, which are brought to you by my friends at Affinity Whole Health. Affinity, they offer personalized treatment plans to help people feel better, whether you're struggling with weight loss, low energy, muscle loss, poor sleep. I mean, normally Schleiks can help you with that, but Affinity, they can help you with that too, providing expert guidance to help you safely reach all of those goals. They've got Ohio covered. They're in Cleveland. They're in Columbus. Heck, they're in Indianapolis. They're up in Chicago. They're all through the Midwest. They can help you anywhere you are. So go reach out to them online at affinitywholehealth.com for your free consultation. All right. We got some headlines now.
Hey, Bob, honestly, again, you look really good in that commercial, man. I see you. I see your work. I appreciate the work.
You know what? It was great is the trainer I was working out today at Ohio State, and the one trainer, Tyler, was over there. We were talking, kids. He's expecting a child and how old my kids were. And I was like, well, I got a freshman, 8th grader, a 5th grader, and second. And he goes, 8th? He's like, are you 40? I'm like, I'm 41 now. Like 40 was last year. It's like, I thought you were in your 30s. I said, okay, well, I appreciate that. I'm like a flood damaged car. I mean, got to get everything warmed up. I got to get up on the curved treadmill, Schleiks, run a little bit. Ran some intervals the other day. That felt pretty good. I ran, a couple laps around the field, and then ran like 8, maybe 10 110s. Pretty good tempo, feeling good. I took a break after running the gasser test.
Yeah,
I took like 2 weeks off of field running to let my body recover again. It was like running a marathon for me. So I need a little bit of time off. But Ryan Day, the thought that he can't win the big game. So we got 2 different stats. We got our poll here, first of all, that we'll just throw up there. As you can see, do you think Ryan Day deserves to be on the hot seat entering the 2024 season? At 55-45, yes than no. I mean, you got 300 people voting, so it's a decent sample size that you're going to come in with that. And I understand why people are leaning in on that. And I understand why they would say, yes, you've lost to Michigan 3 years in a row. And that's never really acceptable at Ohio State. It's something that nobody wants to see. So we get that. But like sometimes you got to be a little bit grateful, Schlegs, about what you have. And so now let's take a look at the coaches' top 10 current winning percentages in college football. And as you look and see there, Schlegs, you're seeing Ryan Day, 87.5%. His 3 conference losses are all to Michigan. He lost to Oregon in the non-conference. He's lost to Clemson in the bowl game. Obviously, Missouri last year was rough. They lost to Alabama in the championship. They've won a number of bowl games. Like they've had success. And people say you can't win the big game. Like that is not true at all. Look at the win. I mean, the one thing I will say before I want you to respond to this is Urban Meyer's a great coach, won 3 national championships. He also lost games at Ohio State that he shouldn't have. You go look back at that Purdue game, look at that Iowa game. Ryan has not lost a game that he shouldn't have. He finds a way to win, even that Northwestern debacle up there, the monsoon and 100-mile-an-hour winds off the lake. Just find a way to win. You don't have to win at 49-7. You just found a way to get it done.
Yeah. 58-6. And I know we're going to show another stat, I believe, Bob, of big games. And here's how I take this. The one thing in college football that you want is you want continuity because it helps with everything. It helps with recruiting. It helps with staff retention. And also you want to develop guys. Like there was a ton of attrition because Urban wanted guys to go off. Kind of nipped us in the butt in 15 when you lose Tom Herman in 14 going down to Houston after a national championship. And so, yeah, you want them to go off, but you also want to stick around. That's why Tress was able to be very successful. Now, I'm not saying that his staffs were the most talented coaches of all time, but Tress in and of himself was a great coach. He was very different, and Urban was very different, and I think Ryan is a very good blend of them, but he totally gets what Ohio State is, and he wins those, again, the games that you are supposed to win, he does win them. The games that are those matchup games that we talk about, right? He's won his fair share. I believe he's almost like 500%. Do we want him to win more of those? 100%. Does he? Absolutely. He also understands this, right? Because one, we're the biggest brand in college football. You're going to have a lot of heat. Too much is given, much is required. And this is what the expectation is. So he totally gets it. Does not faze him. And he ultimately knows is like the goal is beat that team up north, win a national championship. That's it. Guess what? The goal of every guy that is in that building, beat that team up north, win a national championship. That's it. They're laser focused on that.
And I'm not, I mean, he's 1-3, I believe. Yeah, because he lost his last 3 games. They pulled out 1. I mean, it would have been 2-3. But these Michigan teams he's played have been good teams. They won a national championship last year, Schlegs. And 2 years ago, they played in the CFP. Now they got blown out by TCU, and we could talk about signs and everything else in that. But they've been to good teams. I think Ryan handles all the business this year. The only way we'll know is at the end. And believe me, he understands that. Big games this year. Oregon, Penn State, Michigan. You got to take care of business. And then you want to win the Big Ten championship so you can get the bye. He always says it all the time. Win all your games at Ohio State, especially the last one in the regular season. That's very, very true. Some of those teams in the early, 2012, 13, 14 in Michigan weren't all that great under the end of Brady Hoke and the beginning of Jim Harbaugh. Like you weren't playing the quality of opponents. And so right now, like it's a little bit different of a paradigm, but Ryan's won the big games. He's got it. And so let's throw up here the graphic before we get out of here. Head coaching records. And this is good because we got James Franklin right there at the top, Schlegs. Head coaching records against top 10 teams. Like Kirby Smart, unbelievable record. You look at what he's been able to do. You look at Kalen DeBoer, what is he, 4-1? You were sitting there looking at some of these guys. Ryan Day, 8-7. He's above 500.
Yep.
And down there, I mean, you could be James Franklin sitting down there at the bottom with like a handful of wins and 20-some tries. So he's gotten it done in a big way in the big games. Would you like to see that number be 2-1? I think everybody would, Schlegs. You'd like to have 10 wins to 5 losses. Everybody would. And I think that he'll probably get to that point. He's lost some critical ones in the last couple of years, but this team is as talented as we talked about, and they're laser focused. So I feel good about it.
Yeah, I feel good about it too. And the reason I feel good about it is because of the coordinator situation. Chip Kelly has his system. Jim Knowles has his system. Ryan unequivocally trusts them to do their job. That's why I believe that they're going to be able to get it done.
Well, and 7 of his 8 losses, Schlegs, were against top 10 opponents, not just, like they're right there. Like he was playing really good ball. And like, here's the thing, everybody loves Dan Lanning. Like, let's not forget Dan Lanning last year lost 2 games to his rival in Washington. They lost in the regular season, and some of that was mismanagement coaching. Then they lost again in the conference championship. The same team, rival again. So like it happens to everyone, and everyone's fawning over Dan Lanning right now and what he's able to do, and rightfully so. He's a very good coach. I'm not taking anything away from him, but just understanding that maybe there's a little deference that needs to be given sometimes, and pump the brakes. I think this year is going to be a very good year. I'm excited about it. But I mean, people have been calling for James Franklin for years because you watch James Franklin in some of those big game Schlegs, and you see a talented team get out coached. Very rarely, and I'm going to remove last year's bowl loss, but very rarely do I watch a game where I see Ryan Day get out coached. They may lose from time to time, but very rarely is it from something like there's a structural issue. Oregon in 2021, that was a bad deal. It was a very bad deal. Couldn't get the track toss.
35-21.
Yeah, so you couldn't stop the track toss. Changes were made on the staff. Fix that problem. You don't have it anymore. Went out and got Jim Knowles. You solved the defense. So he can do that. And let's not also forget one thing. Like I said, this isn't railing on Urban because he's so good. It's just people always forget. So the longer you've been away, the better you were. But that 2016 playoff game against Clemson too, I guess maybe the 2017 Fiesta Bowl.
31-0.
31-0, dude. Got blanked. And it was bad. I was at that game. It was bad. Like the other team was more talented. Clemson was more talented, but also out-coached as well. And like, you just hate to see that.
Absolutely. And I think absolutely. And I think here's the deal. When you look at those handful of games that Ryan has lost, they always had opportunities to win it, right? Even the Michigan game last year, you're going down, you have an opportunity to win the football game. The Georgia game, going to a college football championship, you had a chance to win the game. So it's not like they've been blowouts. It's not like they've been outmatched. It's just they didn't execute at the very end. That Michigan game, Michigan played flawlessly. We made mistakes, and we were still there at the end of the game to win it.
All right, time for a break. We have Chris Plank coming up, covers Oklahoma. Going to dive in, does a lot of stuff nationally, talk a lot of college football around the country. Stay locked in on the Bobby Carpenter Show.
Well, how do they know I'm doing this? Did somebody leak this out?
It's social media.
Oh.
It's just, that's the way social media works now.
I thought maybe you were just running that yep.
Welcome to Big Play, a sports media team that started back in 2014, and now we're not in a garage. Look at us, incorporating some of Cleveland's favorite sports personalities, bringing you fun and compelling content from downtown Cleveland. Coming to you live from the shores of Lake Erie and Burke Lakefront Airport, join Team Big Play for all the best sports talk in Ohio. Check us out on social media at Big Play, bringing you fun and compelling content from downtown Cleveland.
Anthony Schlegel, just how physical he was. You saw the girth and the power and everything he was bringing to the table, especially when he was a nice beefy 255 playing middle linebacker. All right, here now with my guy, Chris Plank. Happy to welcome him in. He does a great job out there covering Oklahoma. Before we get into that, though, Plank, your boy Gundy, I mean, what's going on with Oklahoma State? And dudes holding out QR codes on helmets. I mean, I know that's the Cowboys and not the Sooners, but is everything going all right out there in Oklahoma?
Yeah, and it's kind of funny that you say that, because I actually have to give Mike Gundy some credit on this, Bobby, because I don't know if there's anyone who has pushed back more on NIL than Mike Gundy has. And then to accept the QR codes, which again, a little digital panhandling almost, but hey, who knows if it works. Now they say you won't be able to actually do it from the stands. Like you won't be able to get the guys' QR codes on their helmet, but they're going to put it on their massive big screen. I was surprised. Mike Gundy, sneaky. I love watching the guy. He is in an IDGAF mode right now as a person and a coach. I get the biggest kick out of him, and I can't wait to see how this is going to play out. Will it become a wave of the future, or is it just going to be another, hey, how about that?
Yeah, Plank, I love Gundy, man. The mullet, and I saw this thing on IG about Gardner Minshew like working out to Creed, and that was just absolutely amazing. I could see him rocking out to that.
Oh, yeah.
Probably a little Allman Brothers, like he's like some Southern rock too. Just out there just talking crap about NIL, and then on the side, he's just going to get his guys money. Stop talking about NIL with me and your agents. Shut up. I'm gonna get you guys more. Don't worry about it. Anyways,
and what's funny about it too, by the way, just to jump in, he's not wrong. It's like, go play ball, and then we'll talk about money after the season.
I love it. Now I love the way he handles his business. So all right, so let's talk OU. Right now you're in the SEC, and in the SEC, it's about quarterback play. And that's really all college football. That's the NFL. You guys have a new rising quarterback, right? Dylan Gabriel's gone. Tell us a little bit about Jackson Arnold.
Yeah, it's a fascinating story, Anthony, and it's going to be one that I think a lot of people will be keeping an eye on this year. And I'm not trying to compare Oklahoma to Kansas State, but they're both in kind of similar situations. And it hits really close to home, I think, for y'all too, because, Chris Kleiman, the head coach of Kansas State, made that decision to go with Avery Johnson, and they let Will Howard walk away. And Will Howard's the starting quarterback at Ohio State. Oklahoma had made the decision that, hey, 2024 was going to be Jackson Arnold's year. Now, hypothetically, 24 was supposed to be the last year in the Big 12, right? They weren't supposed to go to the SEC until 2025. But Dylan Gabriel, and I think he say this, so I'm not saying anything bad about DG. I think he's a really good quarterback, and I think he's going to do great things at Oregon. But he didn't get the draft grade back that he expected. And when he didn't get the draft grade back that he expected, he realized, I can make more money playing college football for another year. And in this case, it's not like Oklahoma said, get out of here. It was just, hey, you're going to compete for the starting job. You're going to compete with Jackson Arnold. And so Dylan Gabriel made the decision, get paid, go out to Oregon, and he's a preseason Heisman candidate. Oregon's a top 5 team, and Oklahoma, I guess, is just hoping they win 2 or 3 games if you listen to some people. But listen, based on the SEC schedule, there's a part of me that's like, geez, dude, maybe that is where we need to be right now. But in all seriousness, man, Jackson Arnold he's a 5-star. He's a good kid. He's a hard worker. He is accurate. And I know if you just look at the bowl game, you're going to have questions, and you should, but they really believe in him, and he's taken over as a leader. And I think he's going to have a really special season. I think it'll be fun to follow. He's going to make mistakes. He's going to struggle at times, but I think he's got a chance to be really special.
So, like you work with Oklahoma, you travel to all the games. We work through Saturday morning shows. You're all over the place: Manhattan, Kansas, Lawrence, Kansas. Up in Missouri, Columbia. I mean, everywhere you can possibly be throughout what was once the Big 12. So you mentioned Will Howard there. You got an up close and personal look at him over the last couple of years. Yeah. What are your thoughts about Will Howard from just what you observed in some of those, hotly contested games with Kansas State and Oklahoma?
Yeah, I think, Bobby, I have different levels of how I feel about Will Howard. So at first I thought he was terrible. Whenever he came in 20, I'll just be honest. I think he would probably tell you the same thing. When Skylar Thompson got hurt in 2020, that COVID year, he was forced into play. I mean, he wasn't ready. And I remember doing shows on Sirius XM, and I'd come away thinking, man, they need to move this guy to tight end. He's not going to be a quarterback. He's big, he's strong. It's not there. And then he didn't play a ton his second season. And then his third year, when Adrian Martinez there, and they were kind of battling. When he took over, when they finally made him the starting quarterback, you're like, this guy's a dude, right? And it's one of the great improvements. I've learned a lot about judging quarterbacks because I thought Jaden Daniels, I thought Bo Nix, I thought Michael Penix. I thought they were all awful. And these new places, they're rock stars. And so I've learned not to judge, and I've learned that a lot about, Will Howard. Will's got that man. He is a dual threat that you don't realize it because of its size. It's different. It's kind of Jalen Hurts like. And I grew to really appreciate him, man. I grew to really, really like him. And whenever he went to, I'm not going to lie, I was surprised to see he ended up at Ohio State. I thought it might be maybe somewhere like a rung below Ohio State. But when you think about the Chip Kelly factor and the leadership, I feel like he's a good fit. He's a good kid. He's a hard worker. He was fun to cover. And he made an incredible jump over what he was his first 2 seasons to what he was his last 2. And I think he's got a chance to really have a special year.
I was just looking at your schedule, and you're absolutely right. You got Tennessee, then you got Auburn, Texas, South Carolina, Ole Miss ranked, then you got Maine. I mean, come on, here we go. Then you got Missouri, Alabama, LSU to finish it off. And really to have success, and I was reading some things that you've been talking about, like, to me, it's the O-line. And we've been talking O-line for a different reason here at Ohio State. But, like, talk a little bit about the coach, Bill Bendabaugh, and like what he's having to do to revamp this, because the great O-lines in the SEC, the ones that can run the football and control the line of scrimmage, are the ones that can do well. And that's something that Brent Venables has to have this year at OU.
Yeah. Well, Anthony, it's like you're sitting right here next to me. I just wrapped up my show. I'm still I'm on remote, and I'm still at my sponsor's location today. So I'm sorry it's not the usual home setup, General. But, Anthony, it's like you just did my show with me, right? I mean, we're concerned about the offensive line. Now, for the future of the offensive line, it looks really good. They just brought in they just won a battle against Texas for a kid named Michael Fasusi, 5-star coming in. They've got some impressive recruits, but it's completely rebuilt. It's all rebuilt. There's really one guy that's back that started games last year, and we don't know where he's going to play. He can either end up being a guard or a tackle. You've got they went to the transfer portal really late after the spring to go get their center. I mean, you didn't have your center in during the regular part of spring football. I mean, that's concerning. But in Branson Hickman, the kid from SMU, they feel really good about him. Fabechi Wiwu is a transfer from North Texas. And it seems like right now, as we sit here, he's the only guy that you say, yeah, that's a slam dunk starter. And it's either at right or left guard. Michael Tarquin, left tackle. But is he going to be able to stave off people battling him? You get him as a 3-time transfer. He was at USC, then he went to Florida. Now he's at Oklahoma. But never a guy that's talked about being drafted, and yet he's won this left tackle job. So it's just wild to see how these pieces are fitting together. And you're right, man. Coach Beanbo's the best. He is football through and through, and it's awesome to see. And I like him, and I believe in him, and I believe in what he's trying to put together. We just have to see it, and we got to see how these pieces fit. One other note, and I know we're up against it, but he is also – they've been dinged up a little bit on the offensive line. They haven't had a chance to have their full 5 starters, I think, work as much as they want. So that'll be interesting over the first few weeks to see how that gels together in time for Tennessee.
So as we look at this schedule here for you, Plank, you mentioned it's a little bit of murder's row. Texas, I feel like maybe got a little easier pathway.
Little.
Yeah, minus a little. They got the easier pathway in their inaugural season. Is there one game that like Sooner fans are circling this year, like outside of Red River, that would be the game?
I think it's Tennessee. I think it's got a chance to be a swing game for both teams, right? And then there is this added element of Josh Heupel's back. And listen, when Josh was let go after the 2014 season as the Oklahoma offensive coordinator, it wasn't a happy ending, right? It wasn't as well received by him as you would. You got fired. I mean, I don't know how you're supposed to receive it, but I became a big Josh Heupel guy. He went and he rebuilt his career. He was the offensive coordinator at Utah State. He was the offensive coordinator at Missouri, and then boom, he gets the UCF job, and now he's turned things around at Tennessee. I think Sooner fans still love him, and I think that's going to be a really, really cool homecoming. But in that too, Bobby, it's a massive game for Oklahoma. You got to win that game. That could swing everything for them. That's, you want to set that tone that, hey, we're in the SEC and we're not just here for the payday from the team. We're going to come win these games. So in a fan's mind right now, that is must win. And I think it's important because it's Tennessee. It's important because Josh Heupel's back. And it's important because you got to set a tone in this conference.
So, and lastly, before we get you out of here, is this, in your mind, a playoff team? And is that the expectation in this new 12 team where the SEC should get 4 teams in? I mean, is that the hope? Is that the expectation for Venables now?
It's University of Oklahoma. The expectations are always championships, but man, that is a lot to put on with this schedule in the first year in the conference. I'm a believer in Brent, so I think he's going to win every year. When he was at Clemson, when he was at Oklahoma before, hell, when he was at Kansas State, I think they're going to be better than people anticipate. Is it playoffs or bust? Probably not. But Oklahoma's mindset is always going to be, we're going to compete for championships. They might be a year away from that, but I think they're going to be better than what people are expecting them right now. I would bang the over on the win total is what I'm saying.
What is their win total that you've seen?
It was like it's 7, I think is
Ooh.
what it was last I saw. Yeah. So that'd be one that I would feel comfortable betting on.
Okay. Yeah. I would take the over too. It is a tough schedule, but
yeah,
you feel good about it. Well, Chris Blank, we appreciate the time. Great job as always, man. Hopefully we'll make this a little regular basis for you. And hopefully you can get back at home, not on location, but hey, you know what? We got football in 9 days?
We do.
So very exciting. So we appreciate the time, sir.
Thanks, Bobby. Thanks, Anthony. Good to see you.
Hey,
Guys.
All right. Coming up next, we've got our tailgate talk. Questions from listeners. We get to dive into all your concerns. So like you said, they're basically almost always the same, but they're always out there. So we dive into that here next on the Bobby Carpenter Show. All right, here, Mr. Schlegel Valley.
Yeah, let's go.
You dove into it earlier, and we
They should have tailgate talk where they should ask us like random things. Like you were talking about better sleep. I had a great sleep last night. You know why? Because I did some work, and then I was like, hey, guess what? I'm gonna go mow a pasture. You know what I did? Boom! I pounded about 2 Blackie Milds, sat on there, listened to some country music, went in, ate some eggs and some oatmeal. Took a melatonin, out.
Coach,
that's how you do it.
I can't wait to eat
wood
some
tip.
eggs.
Wood tip. Yeah.
Wood tip. Nice,
yeah.
Nice and sweet.
Honestly, man, like wood tip Blackie Milds and Red Man Golden Blend literally throw me back to high school. And when I had a CD case, you guys remember the CD cases that we used to have? And I had the reverse Oreo where it went country, rap, and rock. And like double-sided 4 CDs per page, flip it over, always full because I was burning them. I had like a burn machine. I would burn CDs for everybody, but it was great. A little nostalgia for everybody before tailgate talk.
Do you feel like calling them Blackie Milds makes it like less severe? Like it's an easier deal. Like it's more like having like maybe a sucker as opposed to just a black and mild.
I don't know. That's just like I call a toilet a toilet. You know what I mean? I just have little things that I say, Bob, that are completely weird and off basis, and I just derailed this segment. So
it's all right. It's all good. So like, this is the stuff that people want. As I'm just kind of scrolling here, when they talk about a lot of these questions are all offensive line focused, and a lot of them are recruiting focused, and everything else.
Number 1 recruiting class in the country, boys. Let's go.
So this is one for you though, Schleiks, because this is something that you lean in on a lot. It said, I saw some articles about lean mass being part of the Michigan O-line weight goals. Does OSU have a similar goal, or they mostly focus on strength, total weight for the offensive line?
I mean, guys, I could go to the rabbit hole in this thing, but again, lean muscle mass is critical for every position. So it's not just the offensive line. And again, we have a full-time nutritionist. Guys get on the DEXA scan semi-annually, looking at where they are. And they all have different needs. Some guys need to put on more weight. Some guys need to lose weight, lose body fat. And that goes into what's your resting metabolic rate and what is the caloric deficit that you have to get to that, right? Well, when you do that, then your lean muscle mass is going to take a little bit of a halt, right? Because you have to increase those calories to be able to improve lean muscle mass. You can still do it, but not to the effect. So again, everybody has their own baseline. Every athlete is individualized, right? Because they're all unique. But yeah, it's something that everybody takes into consideration that does it at the level that Ohio State does.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, you want to get out there, be a grinder, Schlegs. That's what it's all about. I know that you love to grind everywhere in the weight room.
Who doesn't? You
on
love
the
the
app.
pepper grind. You love the pepper grind. But hey, here's the other thing: strength and power. We play a game of power and acceleration. Like people forget that. And as an offensive lineman, you have to have strength. And there's some things that I've gone back to, like when is strong enough? Is like strength to be able to perform your job. Like what does that look like? And
I don't know.
Our guys are strong.
Schlegs, I watched Larry Allen bench 225 like 49 times with a Rolex on.
I saw Larry. I remember a video, Bob. That's so funny. One, I remember somebody was asking us a question like baddest dude you ever played, and I somehow just like totally screwed that answer up, and it was him because I came through unscathed. Boom, pulling, bam, ear hole, right? And I was like, damn. I just remember like he could bench press 600 pounds. I mean, he was just a mountain of a human being. You know, not saying like that to be the end all be all. Like everybody, guess what? They don't need to bench 600 pounds. But I would say this in totality of what I've seen our players do at Ohio State, I feel very comfortable with where they are. I mean, Coach Mick is the best, man. He's the GOAT. He's the GOAT.
He is. He's really good. And I also watched Larry Allen chase down a linebacker on an interception and just smoked the dude out of bounds. Looked like he was running about a 4.7.
Yeah, it's because he thought he had a rack of ribs too.
Exactly. This one's coming from Witty Buckeye. I think you'll like this too, Schlegs. What criteria would a coach use to determine if X player, quote, fits the program when offering recruits? I observe big programs offering 40-plus offensive line recruits. I'm wondering why OSU casts such a smaller net.
I want to hear your take on this first. I got an idea.
So, I mean, you want to be targeted. Like, I've never been a scattershot guy in recruiting. I think you're obviously not going to get every player that you go after, and that's for a variety of reasons. Some guys, like, you can't win. There's certain things that you cannot give them, whether that's proximity. Some guys just maybe don't want to go to a school that's that big. There's certain factors and variables that you cannot overcome, and that's all right. Like, that's okay. But I think you probably, and I don't know what the right number is for every position, but I think if you land about between 30 to 50% of the guys that you like target and really go after, I would say that that's really good. And so I think you don't want to go too wide, because when you get too wide, Schlegs, you're not going to be bringing in the quality of guys. It's hard to vet all of those dudes, not on their film, but on like their character and personality, those intangibles that we talk so much about that are incredibly important.
Yeah, we had Ryan Stamper that did a lot of that like work, right? Off the field stuff. You have CJ Barnett that does it now. Here's why I don't like it. I actually have an 18-year-old that's being recruited, and now it's completely different. It's baseball. But as a parent, like I'm looking at like who's serious, who's not, what school, because it's completely different, right? Like
you wear that outfit when you go on recruiting trips with them?
No. I wear a shirt, you know, that has sleeves.
That's a shirt. It's just a tank top. It's a type of shirt.
Yeah, no, I mean, but you know what? It's a job interview. That's how I look at it. So I look very presentable. But
it's not your job. I didn't know if you were just trying to go in there.
You know what it is? So it is. Honestly, I would say this in recruiting, it is a job interview for the parent, because if I'm recruiting somebody and I'm looking at his parents, they got like, you know, like Daisy Dukes on, and this guy's dressed like absolute trash. Like what, like, how does that rub off on a kid? Like, because again, when you're thinking about it, I've got to recruit this kid twice a year now in football.
Yeah.
So here's what I don't like about the scatter shot. We're throwing people that throw nuggets out there. They're just trying to like land people like, oh, I want to go get that scholarship. Boom. I could get somewhere else. I don't want to be associated with a program that's going to take scholarships away and over deliver.
Yeah.
You know, I don't. I think that's a lack of integrity. I think that you should be dialed in, laser focused on who you want. I think there could be a little bit greater breadth in certain areas, and we understand that because, again, we talk O-line, we talk D-line. Those are unique human beings that walk the earth, that have a skill set and also a genetic potential to play that position. Those are not average humans, okay? The linebackers, the tight ends, the wide, like, they're different, okay? That's a skill set. But those humans that play in the interior, they're just freaks of nature, right? So the pool of those guys is smaller. So could that net be a little bit wider? Yeah, potentially. But I just hate the idea of throwing scholarships out there, people accepting them, and us having to take them back because we actually got the guy that we wanted. I don't like that. I think that's poor integrity, and I don't believe that Ryan is of that at Ohio State.
One thing you mentioned was the parents, and that's a big deal. Like, you're not just recruiting the kid, you're recruiting the parents because they're going to be involved. And ultimately, the kid's a product of his family. And everybody used to always get upset when guys would get in trouble. And, and that's why I give Kirby Smart a little bit of slack at Georgia for what's happened down there. You've still got to press upon them. But, like, you get these guys when they're 18 years old. So you can't undo 18 years of poor parenting or potentially no parenting. And so you're recruiting the whole family. That's the one thing that this Ohio State team has is they've got great young men because they've got great families for the most part. And, like, these guys are good. So the question for me to you is, Schlegs, you're talking about all this. I mean, when they were seeing Rigoraj and Creamy Connie cruising around, how did you end up at Air Force? I mean, who made that judgment on you saying this kid must be better than the sum must be greater, or the whole must be greater than the sum of the parts? Like, is that where are we at?
My mom made a great meatloaf. And hey, side nugget, when I got recruited on my in-home coach's visit from the Air Force Academy, I was actually in jail. I had to call my mom to go get my buddy who was living with us to go get my other buddy's money because we didn't have any, to bail me out of jail. And I was literally doing like push-ups and sit-ups in the cell while they bailed me out because I was coming from wrestling practice. So it was like, why was I in there? I don't know. It's probably fighting or parking tickets or speeding tickets. I don't know. I don't know technology. I don't know how to pay these things. Probably didn't have any money to do it. So I worked out
back then, dude. Don't give me
I know, but like, where do you send the check? I don't have a checkbook anyway. I mean, I was using a Qualcomm phone back then. Anyways, I digress. I was working out, so I'd be sweaty. So that way, when I walked in, I was like, oh man, sorry, coach, banger over practice, And then we sat down. Mom made a nice meatloaf, threw a bunch of ketchup on that thing. Boom. Went to Air Force Academy. Didn't tell them that story till my sophomore year. So anyways, side nugget for everybody. But yeah, you are recruiting the parents because they're the ones that have a direct impact. One, again, they're getting NIL money. So there's so many different things that you're teaching guys now how to handle their money. Like, who's getting it? Is it a third uncle getting it? Like, who are the people that are involved in these situations? And when you're at Ohio State and the Georgias and the Alabamas, you can be a little selective. Like, oh, that's probably wrong that you should evaluate that. Absolutely not. It is, man. This is a business and it's roster management and trying to keep these guys for 4 years to have the best program available. And then you also are going to pour into them. So not only you pour into them NIL money, but you're also pouring into them resources. So how do you handle your finance? How can we get brands to like you and give you potentially more money? That's a whole different ball game now than it was back when you and I played. I love it, but that's something that you have to evaluate in the recruiting process. It's just facts.
Well, a lot of info there, folks. With that, I need a shower, maybe a Blackie mild, and we got to take a break. We'll see you after this, the Bobby Carpenter Show.
We were called soft last year. You don't want to be soft, especially when you come to the playoffs. So that's going to be a process throughout this season of establishing us as a harder team here in the
They're off in the Kentucky Derby as Authentic takes them around the far turn. Tis the Laws making his move now, and they're into the stretch. These two stride for stride. Authentic, tis the Law. Here's the wire. Authentic has won the Kentucky Derby.
I don't buy into this nonsense, this conspiracy nonsense that he's got his money and he's dogging it. That's ridiculous.
All right, Schlegs, got about a minute left here in the program. As you're sitting here looking on a Thursday, heading in 9 days out, what is the preparation like heading into this final non-game weekend? I mean, I know you have some buys, but dude, the whole season's a blur. Before you get that, I mean, what are we trying to get accomplished here the last couple of days?
Yeah, you're just solidifying what you're putting in, just making sure guys are executing the right way, making sure their bodies are healthy. Probably give them a little bit of time over the weekend, then it's all ball, right? You're locked in, and they've been locked in for a long time. Not even worried about with the leadership that's on this team.
So good, yeah, they're ready to go. I think they're going to be fine. I think they got a little mock game to go through everything. on Saturday. It's, the substitutions, keep working on the headsets, all the new things that are out there, running out of the tunnel. Like, you got to practice this. You've got guys who have never been in Ohio Stadium and played a real game before. So that's all there. We got one show left coming up. Thank you for this first big week. Tune in tomorrow for the Bobby Carpenter Show.